the message. This session this morning is fueling your connections. If you don't know already, relationships are single-handedly one of the best things that you can ever foster in your life. It will get you to the door, through the door, and even further more in life. So without further ado, let me introduce to you Miss Alicia Wilson. Alicia Wilson is the Vice President of Economic Development for Johns Hopkins University and Johns Hopkins Health System in Baltimore, Maryland. She leads a core team focused in developing and implementing Hopkins institutional-wide strategies and initiatives as an anchor institute in and around Baltimore, in the elevation and expansion of Hopkins' signature commitment to the city through investments in economic and neighborhood development, healthcare, and education. Prior to joining Hopkins, Alicia served as the Senior Vice President of Impact Investment and Senior Legal Counselor to the Port Covington Development Team. As a partner of the downtown Baltimore law firm of Gordon Finblatt. I hope I said that right.
Right, close enough, close enough.
All right. Alicia actively serves on the board of the on the boards of University of Maryland School of Law, Board of Visitors, the Center for Urban Families, and the Walter Art Museum, and the National Diverse Attorney Pipeline Program. Notably, Alicia was recently elected chair of the College Bound Foundation, and as such is a first College Bound Foundation alum. First woman, first African-American, and youngest board chair in the 30 history of year of the organization. That is absolutely amazing. Alicia is a graduate of the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, and the University of Maryland, Francis Key Carey School of Law. Do you want me to stop there?
Yeah, stop there, stop there.
Okay, okay. He has so many notables.
It's a long resume, so I was like, don't go through it all. It's a pleasure to be here this morning. I was really excited. I almost didn't sleep a little bit last night, so I was really excited to get to come and speak with y'all because I know how important it is to fuel your connections. I have a PowerPoint, but before I sort of lose some of you on the screen, I was going to have us go around just to say sort of your name and sort of what your maybe what your goal right now, because they shift over time, as I'll talk about a little bit, and sort of where you're from. So why don't we start, Legacy?
Okay, I go to Temple University. I'm from DC, and I study community development and minor in public policy.
Oh, all right. So we're like kindred spirits. So yeah, I'll talk a little bit. Happy to connect after too. Derek, am I pronouncing your name correctly?
It's Derek.
Derek, I'm so sorry.
It's okay. Hi, my name is Derek. I go to Barnard College in New York City. I am from Silver Spring, Maryland, and I'm planning to major in urban studies with concentration architecture or economics. I'm not sure, and probably go into the finance route, but I don't know.
Oh, that's a great go finance. Trust me. Trust me. And Mektis, I hope I pronounced your name correctly.
Hi everyone, my name is Mektis. I go to Westchester University, freshman.
University of
My
Richmond?
major is math. Yeah.
Oh, major is math. Okay, so I was a minor in math, but learned that you don't, I mean, that's a great major. You're gonna have an amazing career because of that. So let me talk a little bit about the fueling your connections, and I'm gonna give you a number of examples for why this is so important. If I would say one of the most significant things that I think when you hear my bio, you hear my resume, you hear about my awards, behind that is all connections. All connections. Because you'll learn at a certain point, everyone's smart. So it's not, being smart's not enough. And so I'll talk to you a little bit throughout this and how I was able to fuel connections and how I continue to do that, because it's not like you don't ever stop. That's the good news and the bad news. So a little bit of good and bad when you talk about that. So I'm gonna share my screen. Oh, yeah. Okay. So are you seeing a slide says fueling your connections?
Yes.
Set them up. Okay, great. All right. So as you see, like I made this. So I'm very proud of I'm very proud of this presentation I made because it didn't take me that long, but I put a lot of heart into it. But really, and you see in the screen, you know, the connections look like they're all over the world. I'll tell you how I built connections literally all over the world, and all over this country with people who others would say you would never get access to, and how those people have really impacted my life in really powerful ways. So in this presentation, I'm gonna hit on six power. We're gonna do it in less than, how much time do I have? 30 minutes?
Yes.
30 minutes. Okay, in 30 minutes, you're gonna get a crash course in connections. So this is gonna be good. First, I'm gonna talk about the difference between contacts and connections. Give you tips on how to make connections, how to build relationships with connections, understanding the difference between mentorship and sponsorship. It's a really big one. How to begin mentorships and how to embrace the power of connections and add fuel to that. Okay. So those are the things we're going to cover, but I'm also going to give you plenty of time to ask me questions because some of what I say will elicit questions. And I'm happy because we have a nice intimate group that you can ask me questions throughout. So you can definitely come off mute and ask me any questions you may have. So the first is to understand the difference between contacts and connections. Now, this is a critical distinction to make. I give out on any given time I give a speech. So I give speeches to hundreds to thousands of people, and I always give them my business card. And many times at events, I can give out 50, 100, 200 business cards. And people have my contact. They have my business card. But this does nothing if it just stays in your little bag, stays in your purse, stays on your desk. Most people will take this business card and guess what? They will do nothing with it. I had like no fear. I can give out 500 business cards and I know that I'm only going to get maybe 5 people who are going to go the next step and connect. You probably had that, right? You've had speakers come and speak to you. You've received business cards. You may have seen somebody do something. You take it and you don't do anything with it. And guess what happens? It does nothing for you. So the real critical difference is to turn a contact into a connection, right? Real critical difference. Because how many give me all of you on social media?
Yes.
Right? You have hundreds of contacts. Some of those people you don't even know, right? You just connected with them, you followed them. Those are just contacts. Now we're going to move to a connection, which is really critically important for you to be able to fuel your career, your personal life, your development as a young scholar, your development as women and men. So let's talk about that. So if we talk about connections and why this is important, it is foundational to leadership. There is not a leader that does not connect. Not one. Not anyone you can name that's in your given field, that's doing well, that does not do this thing. And so they connect on multiple bases. So I have really a cheat sheet of like 8 points that I always say are critical to be able to be a connector. The first is that you have to connect with yourself. A lot of people skip this part. Why don't you want to skip this part? Because connection is about 2 people recognizing that they have a mutual shared objective, goal, and ethos that they then want to build off. And how many of you like to build relationships or connections with people that aren't likable? You ever like doing that? Like they're not likable, but I really would like to spend some time with them. You know what? They have like character traits I don't like, but you know what? I want to go get coffee with them. No, you connect with people you like. You connect with people who bring you joy. You connect with people who you see are doing positive things, are moving. And so if you want to connect with people like that, people want to connect with others like that. And so who are you is so critically important to this question of, are people going to want to connect with you? Are you someone? So I have a series of questions that you can ask yourself. And I usually encourage people to ask someone else in order to really come to understand this question. Ask someone, not someone who doesn't like you, not someone that doesn't care about you. It's usually a mentor, a guide, a strategic growth partner, a close friend. Ask them these questions. How would you describe my personality? Am I introvert, extrovert? Am I friendly? How would you describe me? Second, what do you think is my greatest character strength? I mean, answer this for yourself first, but then ask someone else, what is my greatest character strength? Am I loyal? Do I follow through? Honesty, trustworthiness? What's my greatest character weakness? Do I not always follow up? Do I drop the ball sometimes? What's my single greatest asset? My smile? The way I'm able to do for others? My kindness? What's my single greatest deficit? How well do I relate to others? Am I a person when I come in the room, people just light up? They are drawn to me like a magnet? Or do I have to work at it? Right? How well do I communicate with others? Am I always being misunderstood? Or am I always misunderstanding someone? And then how likable am I? You know, how do people react to me? And really being honest with yourself and having someone who loves you, cares about you. That's why I say don't ask somebody, a friend of me, but ask someone who really cares about you these questions, because it's helpful to know where you stand. The second thing I would say is know your audience. And this is really critical, and I'll talk about it a little later, but there's so many people that go through this whole world. They don't know their audience. They show up to baseball games with football uniforms on, right? They show up to balls with jeans on, or vice versa. They show up to the cookout with a ball gown on. Know your audience. Understand that doesn't change who you are, but know who you're interacting with. Remove barriers to connecting, and we'll talk about that a little later. Anything that's impeding you from being able to connect with others has to be eliminated. I think it's critically important. Others may disagree with me, but I really think it's important when you're thinking about building connections to focus on others rather on yourself. I want you to do that analysis of like who you are and all those things. But when you're connecting, if you are self-interested, it fades away. You will not be able to connect well. Fifth, I think this is so critically important, and it's something that I've been able to do, which I think sort of has been able to set me apart. I believe in others. And I express that belief. I champion others, and it is real. It is just it brings me joy to champion others. I think you also, as you think you're connecting and taking things, I think you also have to offer direction and hope. Who wants to be around somebody that's down all the time? It's always raining, no sunshine, not hopeful when you talk about things. Understand that leadership is not a position, and we're going to get into that too, because sometimes you can see this person with a great name, and that's great. But there's also your peers. They don't have titles. Peers that you have individuals who work in your dining hall. You have individuals that work in that are assistants. They don't have big titles, but they are still could be leaders and who you want to connect with. And I think the last one, which is number 8, is to initiate connections. And I think the best people who connect are also humble, because you're going to get rejected. So you can use this card and you could get rejected, but you have to initiate the connection. So we're going to go and talk a little bit next about how to make connections. You want to real practical, because people talk about networking and how do you do it and all this. I try to make it really simple for you. So one, you have to make connecting a priority. So I'll give you an example. When I started practicing law, I would be in my law. I would go, so there are a couple of things I did every day. I'd park my car in the garage and I'd walk 3 blocks to my law firm. And then I'd go into the law firm, come up to my floor and go into my office. And that's what most people did, right? What I did was I would get to work 30 minutes early. Okay, so I might start my day at 9 o'clock, but I would get there at 8:15, 8:30, because I had to make connection a priority. And so how would I use my time? Well, my walk, which may have been faster if I was needing to get to office, right? If I was running late, not a morning person. So if I was running late, I really had to make this priority. I would take the time to walk a little slower and get to know everybody's name that I interacted with as I was going to my office and as I was coming up the elevator, right? So I knew every person that worked in the garage. I knew their names. Eventually, I learned their histories, because I would ask them, like, where are you from? How did you get this job? Tell me about yourself. And over time, I was able to have this whole bevy of people who I interacted with from my garage to in the office. I would go floor by floor. So there were 13 floors in the law firm I worked in. And every day I would go early. And guess who were there? The assistants, the people who made the coffee, the people who gave the mail. And I would talk to them. I would try to understand their names, try to connect with them, all those things, ask about their dreams, and dedicate a few minutes a day. So I'll tell you this. In law firms, you try to become an owner of the law firm. And most of the time that happens at year 10, year 11 in your development. For me, I became a law firm partner in year 6. And you know why? It's because legal assistance, and we'll get to this when we talk about sponsorship, because I think this is a really, really important point. Legal assistants would tell rainmakers, who are people who are in a law firm who make a lot of money, they bring in a lot of business. They would say, you know what? Do you know about this girl that's on the 9th floor? Her name's Alicia. She's really smart. Maybe when you have another case, you should let her work on it. They would say, you know what? You're going to meet this big client. Why don't you take Alicia with you so she can see how that interaction is. They would put me on people's calendars for lunch so I would get to meet them and get to talk to them. If those assistants didn't have a relationship with me, they never would have done that for me. And so I often say, my law firm, the partners made me partner, but it was really those assistants, the mailroom people who said my names in different rooms of opportunity that they were going into that I hadn't even entered, that made the difference. Now for you, you're on a college campus, you're interacting. I want you to take note of how many people do you walk past every day and you don't know their name. Not people with big titles. I'm talking about just people who most people just dismiss. How many of them do you walk past every day and you don't know their name? You don't know if they have children. You don't know anything about their history. And I'm telling you that the connection is the multiplier effect. And you don't know where your connections are going to come from, where your blessings could come from. They could come from anyone if you approach this in a genuine way. And the reason why I tell you this, connect with people regardless of their titles, is because if you don't, what I would pain me is that you make connections only based on title and become self-interested. It's a dangerous way to connect. I only connect with people who I think are important. And that will set you up to be a really someone who ends up developing a habit of not gaining relationships, but rather gaining transactions, which don't amount to much. They're just like contacts. They don't amount to much. So this next, so how do you build relationships with connections? I think it's really critically important for you to communicate with openness and sincerity. That you build credibility by doing what you say and be consistent. So I'm going to tell you about this story of my first mentor, which I will get to how you build mentors, but this is really a good story. So when I was 15 years old, a judge paid for a ticket for me to go to a banquet. That banquet, my mom dropped me off at the front. I don't know why you would drop a person who's like 4'6" off to a banquet in a hotel by themselves, but she did it. She did it anyway. And I went in and she said, go in and, you need to like go meet people and go connect with people. I was 15 years old. So I went in and found a table where I was going to sit, and it was filled with law school students who are still, many of them, my friends to this day. And at that dinner, there was a woman who received an award. And I could tell from how she interacted that she was someone who I wanted in my life. She was just a dynamic individual. And when she finished speaking at the stage, guess what I asked for? I asked her for a business card. And I invited her and I said to her, can I take you out to lunch? Now, I had no money. So this was like an empty promise, but it was okay because I asked her if I could go out to lunch. And she gave me her business card, and I'll never forget what she said. She said, I'm giving you my business card. And that means that I would love to meet you and I'd love to mentor you. But two things, you have to use that business card. You got to call that number. And because I'm a busy person, you also have to be persistent because I'm going to cancel on you. I'm going to sometimes like have something else come up, but I'm going to meet with you and I'm going to focus on you. And I think that was critically important because when she said that, I sort of understood in my back of my mind, like what was necessary to mentor, what was necessary for me as a mentee. I was going to have to chase her. That's what she basically said. You have to chase me. You're going to have to show up. You're going to have to be persistent. I was 15 years old. She's my mentor to this day. She has coached me through every critical moment in my life. She is one of the people who coached me to partnership. She coached me to being a senior vice president. She coached me to becoming a vice president of Johns Hopkins. She was my mentor. She spent so much time with me, but was persistent because she would tell me to do something and I would do what she told me to do. And I would show her that I did it. And I communicated with her with openness and sincerity. I shared my hopes and my dreams, my fears, and she'd pray over me, but she also would just encourage me to keep on going. And I was consistent. So I asked her one day, I was like, why are you even fooling with a 15-year-old? Like, I didn't have anything to do with you. And she said, it was because I was so attracted to the fact that you were persistent and consistent. There was something about your drive at 15 that told me you're going to become something really great. And everybody wants to be a part of a star. Everybody wants to be with a moving train. And so I didn't know that that's the habit that she was actually teaching me, but really was really critically important. So this question is, what's the difference between mentorship and sponsorship? Well, I just told you a little bit, which is a mentor is like a very intimate relationship. They are going to get to know you from the top of your head to the bottom of your feet, a good mentor. And you're going to get to know them from the top of their head to the bottom of their feet. You're going to know what motivates their heart because they're going to give you guidance and advice. And you are not going to take that guidance and advice unless it's contextual. So legacy, they can't give Derek's advice to you and vice versa, because it has to be tailored to you, because you are on your individual journey, professionally and personally. So a mentor is really guiding you with really personalized advice. A sponsor, to contrast, could be a mentor, but sometimes you don't find that person in the same, you don't find it in the same person. A sponsor, and this is why it's so important, the points that I made before, are people who have authority and influence. And the trick, this is the sweet spot of what I'm telling you, is they could be anyone. They could be the secretary, the mailroom clerk, the assistant. I'll give you an example. Okay. So I became, Brittany didn't get to read this on my resume because I didn't let her, but I became the first Truman Scholar at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County in 2003. And Truman Scholar, if you haven't written it down, write it down. It's a great scholarship. It's $30,000 for graduate school. They only give it to one person in each state, but you could get it for being in your state of origin or your state where you're going to college. When I went to the interview, it's competitive. I mean, it is competing at the highest level. And before I went into my interview, I helped the woman who was cleaning our room after lunch clean up. After everyone else had gone, I helped her clean up the room. And I talked to her and figured out that her daughter actually was a freshman at UMBC that I was mentoring. Like coincidental. That's like one of those God moments. Like somebody comes in and you're like, okay, guy, you just showed up today. She took me into my interview. And as she took me into the interview, she told them, I know Alicia, she mentors my daughter, and she was upstairs cleaning the room with me. So I brought her in. And I was like, this woman just said I was upstairs cleaning the room. I'm like, I'm not getting this scholarship. I think I'm a nut job. Like I'm up there cleaning the room right before I'm supposed to be interviewed for this like really prestigious scholarship. I promise you, I got the scholarship because of her. After I did my scholarship, after I did my interview, she went back in the room and then closed the door. And while they were deliberating, she was seeding little things. You know, she's such a nice girl, a selfless human being. She's brilliant. She's helping my daughter achieve really well. That woman actually seeded me to get a scholarship. You don't know where your sponsors are going to come from. They could come from anywhere. That's why it's important to be good to all people, right? Treat people well. And that was really an important point that I learned in that. So really the difference between mentorship and sponsorship, you need both. You're going to get sponsors whether you want them or not. They're going to speak on your name in rooms that you're going to be in. And what you want them to do is when they get the chance to speak on your name, that they speak on it for good and not for, you know what, I know we mentioned her name, but I'm not sure if she's ready. Not sure she's putting in the work. And so it's really important, I think, as our keynote speaker part about, it's about your brand and what are you putting out and what can people say about you and your name as you go along with your journey. So this is a good question. How do you begin the mentorship relationship? Because everybody talks about you need a mentor. A few people tell you how to get one. So let me tell you this. First, you have to initiate the relationship. I promise you, there is no one who's sitting around saying, you know what, today I want to just go out and find some people to mentor. It's not happening. It's not happening. It's not happening. So you are going to need to initiate the relationship. Now, I will say this. I just said that's not happening. There is this point that happens. Sometimes Sometimes I could be at an event. Sometimes I can see a young person. And you know what? I'll initiate the relationship because they remind me of a point in my life. They say something and I'm like, I want to make sure that they don't have to live the lessons that I had to live, that they can learn from me. I want to make sure they don't make a mistake because they're so brilliant, so talented. I want to be a part of that moving train. I want to be a part of that star rising. And so I will initiate the relationship. But most people don't do that. They're busy. So they don't. So you have to initiate the relationship. You got to make the call, make the LinkedIn message, send the email. You must initiate and take that first step. It's easy. Invite them to coffee, invite them to lunch. This is a great point. Nobody's going to tell you this. I'm telling you. You're in college. No one is going to make you pay for coffee. No one is going to make you pay for lunch. Anybody worth their salt that's going to mentor you is going to do that. So don't worry about the money. It's not about the money. But you have to initiate the relationship, initiate the contact, and be consistent after you do. If you want to, now this is one thing people do. They'll come, they'll get your card, they'll get to a coffee. They'll get to the coffee, and then they let it be one coffee. You gotta figure out how to keep in touch. Say, can I keep in touch with you? Can I let you know how I'm doing? Can I check in with you sometime? And guess what? They're gonna say, sure. Yeah, call me. Keep in touch with me. Let me know how you're doing. And be consistent about it. And if you're someone who you're saying, you know, Alicia, you keep saying be consistent. I'm not a consistent person. Put it on your calendar. Remind yourself. Every 3 weeks, every 4 weeks, I need to make a call. Do that. Schedule the time. You don't have to, I'm not saying you have to, you're not going to, if this is not your bet, you're going to make it your bet. You're going to schedule the time to be consistent and demonstrate that you value their time. So don't come late. Don't, you know, it is, and do it whenever it's convenient to you, because to them, I used to come in, I used to ride like 3 buses to get to my mentor's office and sit in her lobby and talk to like everybody. I was like talking to everybody in the law firm, the receptionist, everyone, to wait until she had a moment to talk to me. And you might be like, well, I don't have time for that. I don't have time for that. Well, guess what? I was hungry for a blessing. So I did have time for that. I did have it. And I needed it. Sometimes I just needed a word of encouragement, a word of hope. And so, yeah, I was going to fight for it. I was going to put in the effort. Just like I was standing in line for a Beyonce ticket. I did that. I did that too. But I would also stand in line to get a word of encouragement and mentorship from somebody that I knew could ultimately be a part of my life. So how do you embrace the power and fuel connection?
Alicia, our session is going to close out in 92 seconds.
Oh, dang. I hope that okay, I'm going to get it to you in 30 seconds.
Okay.
You have to figure out how to embrace that power of connection. And I gave you a number of tips on how to do that. And you add fuel by being consistent and persistent. Now I'll close with this. I think I have this quote from Oprah Winfrey, and this is key. To surround yourself only with people who are going to take you higher. And that's really the most important point about fueling your connections. People taking you higher, and more importantly, you also being able to take others higher. It has been a pleasure. I'm so sorry I didn't leave enough time. I got thrown off in time, but I appreciate
we have questions. We have about 45 seconds if anyone has a question.
Oh yeah, anybody have a question?
I have a question.
Sure.
You talk about connecting and continue those relationships, but how do you like schedule that time to make sure people like hear you and see you? That's what I mean, like my question.
Oh, you asked them for 30 minutes, 45 minutes. and they and you can't get it all in one fell swoop. So you're gonna have to, 30-minute episodes, because you're not, this is a long term. Remember, I said my mentor has been my mentor since I was 15 years old. So you're not going to be able to.
Yeah, it's crazy. Alrighty. I think we are all back in here.